Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Sunday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing great out there tonight. Had yourselves a wonderful day, and I hope everyone has had a great weekend as it comes to an end. And once again, we are heading off into a very active weather work week. It seems like we just said that, breaking down Hurricane Helene. But here we are saying it again, breaking down Hurricane Milton. Milton is rapidly intensifying this afternoon into this evening and has been since this morning. Will continue to do so overnight into at least tomorrow, potentially all the way into Tuesday. So I just want to get that out of the way, kind of reiterate that this is a changing storm system as far as it intensifying. So what I mean is, by the time some of you folks watch this later tonight, this could potentially be a Category 2, maybe even Category 3 hurricane. The peak forecast intensity for the National Hurricane Center, folks, is increased to a mid-grade 145 mile per hour Category 4 hurricane. I really think this has an opportunity to become a Category 5 hurricane. The million-dollar question is it going to make landfall at its strongest, at its peak intensity? So we're going to break down all of that. We're going to go over all the model guidance, the hurricane models, the global models. We're going to talk about what's going on with this system right now, of course. We're going to go over the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and we're going to take a deep dive into impacts. We're going to try to mention town names, beach names, city names. I'll probably butcher a few, but I just want to get as detailed as possible here. This is definitely a very concerning, unfolding situation right now. So we'll dive deep into the winds, the rainfall, all those things. And then stay tuned for the back half of the video. I'm going to nerd out with you guys, really explain why this is exploding in strength right now and will continue to do so. But I'm also going to dive deep into why it has the potential to weaken right before landfall. So stay tuned for that. If you just want to listen to a guy nerd out about the weather, I got you covered there. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And more importantly, if you folks got anything that I can pray about or pray over, or anybody else, like I said, can pray over, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of others can see your prayer request, please put it in the comments below. Even if it's unspoken, please put it in the comments. So with that being said, let's get rocking and rolling this evening. So let's make sure this is going to work for us, and it is. So we're good to go. So obviously the eyesore is right here in the middle of your screen. That is Hurricane Milton. Milton is, like I said, rapidly intensifying right now. The structure is improving. You're seeing the kind of the screen dim a little bit. That is because the sun is starting to lower in the sky, and ultimately the sun will be setting on Hurricane Milton here in the coming hours. But you know, it has a very healthy cyclonic spin to it. I mean, it looks like a hurricane. No cleared out eye right now. I mean, we're not talking about a powerful major hurricane right at this second. But I think by the time we get into this time tomorrow evening, we're probably going to have a cleared out eye. This thing is going to have the look of a very powerful, dangerous hurricane. But right now, it's growing in intensity, very compact hurricane. You see a lot of clouds kind of being dispersed out like this. We've been talking about this a lot over the last several videos, breaking down this storm system. There's already kind of a pre-event ongoing right now in Florida. A lot of rainfall, scattered shower and storm activity across the state of Florida. This isn't directly associated with Milton, but it's big. It's pretty much part of a favorable environment for a lot of shower and storm activity. A lot of rising air across the entire Gulf of Mexico, which is kind of a check off the box, if you will, of an ingredient that supports tropical development. And that is why we have an intensifying tropical cyclone, which is Milton, in the Gulf of Mexico. This thing's going to start to pick up some speed too. Just been dragging over the last 24 hours and barely moving. So that's what's going on with the system right now. Let's go on and take that all off your screen and continue to move forward. So the latest advisory from 5 p.m. We'll have another one here in the next hour or so. And like I said, I'm going to reiterate this probably a couple more times. This is a changing situation as far as the system itself. It's strengthening. So by the time some of you folks watch this, of course, this one will no longer be an 85 mile per hour hurricane, which is what it is right at this second as of around 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. This could very well be at 100, 105, maybe 110 mile per hour hurricane. But right now, Category 1, 85 mile per hour hurricane. And this is the cone from the National Hurricane Center. Just a different way to look at it. It's called Zoom Earth. It's awesome. It'll kind of show you in depth, if you will, the peak intensity. But by the time we get into tonight, folks, 2 a.m. tonight, Monday morning, here in the next several hours, you might as well say, this is going to increase another 20 miles per hour to a 105 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane. Guys, by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, it's a major Category 3 hurricane. Okay? By the time we get into 2 a.m. Tuesday, it's a 140 mile per hour Category 4 hurricane. How close does this get to the Yucatan Peninsula? It's trended close enough to where you guys have hurricane watches now. Peak intensity as of right this second is for Tuesday afternoon, a 145 mile per hour Category 4 major hurricane. That's a mid-grade Category 4 hurricane, folks. Mid-grade to high-grade. I mean, either way, it's a Category 4 storm. Okay? Drops a little bit in intensity as we get into 2 a.m. Wednesday. 140 mile per hour, dangerous Category 4 hurricane. And then it has it back down to a Category 3 hurricane by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon. So it has it weakening. The center of the cone right now kind of goes just around the Sarasota area, kind of south of Tampa. Okay, but remember, this is not an impact zone. This is where the center of the storm still could go. So the center of the storm still could go all the way up here. I mean, maybe up to just the bend of Florida. It could go all the way down here deep in southwest Florida. Very well could. Down like near Fort Myers, Naples, Florida, things like that. Center of the system goes right over the peninsula of Florida. Hurricane force conditions, I mean, across Orlando, interior sections of the state. Everybody's going to see it. I mean, obviously Florida is a pretty narrow state, so it's not like this is going to dramatically weaken into a tropical storm just for the several hours it's over Florida. Okay, it's going to go right over it. So right now, it has it making landfall as a major Category 3 hurricane, but the peak intensity happens way back here over the Gulf of Mexico. All right, so that's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Let's refresh this, see if we just have a new update. We don't. This is the 5 p.m. Eastern Time update. Just a standard cone you guys are used to seeing here. M stands for major hurricane, H for hurricane. And then, of course, this is going to lose some of its tropical characteristics once it gets off the coast of the southeastern U.S. because a lot of dry air gets involved. But we definitely need to watch Bermuda on down the road as we get closer to the weekend. Not going to speak on that much right now. So let's dive into the hurricane models. We'll talk about those first, and then we'll talk about the global models. I want to start this off by showing you the actual millibar this system is right at this second per the 5 p.m. update. I want to note, this thing is dropping in millibar right now, so it could be in the 970s. Recon missions, the hurricane hunters are flying into this system nonstop. Not nonstop right now, but they will be here in the coming days. But they do have consistent missions going into the system right now. Right now, it's a 983 millibar system. Could be lower, which means it could be stronger. Moving east at a whopping 7 miles per hour is an 85 mile per hour hurricane. Okay, let's start diving into these hurricane models. So just remember, initializing as a 983, real time. All right, let's start going over these hurricane models. This is the H-Wharf model. So the H-Wharf model is nailing the millibar of this storm, 983. Okay, so it's initializing pretty darn well right now. So let's go on and get this in motion. All right. And the hurricane models take a very close look at this system. You're going to see some land masses coming up at the bottom of your screen, which will be the Yucatan, then at the right side of your screen, which will be Florida eventually. So we get all the way into Monday morning. It deepens this into a 955 millibar Category 2 or 3 hurricane by the time we are waking up tomorrow morning in the Gulf of Mexico. There's the Yucatan down here. By the time we get into Monday evening, this is, folks, this is 24 hours from now. This is all the way down to a Category 4, maybe 5 hurricane when we get into tomorrow evening. Okay, even the National Hurricane Center discusses this as a possibility. This isn't just some hype, some crazy model runs. Most hurricane model runs show this. Okay, we take it into Tuesday morning. It's a 934 millibar Category 4 or 5 hurricane. Yucatan right here. It gets very close. That's why you got hurricane watches now. We take it into Tuesday evening. This bottoms out at a 928 millibar Category 4 or 5 hurricane, folks. Very compact hurricane. And then we take it into Wednesday morning. You notice that millibar begins to rise. That means there's a weakening. It's a weakening hurricane at this point. But the system begins to expand because it starts to get hit by a wind shear. And a lot of times these systems begin to expand when that happens, when a little bit of dry air gets involved. And I think that'll start to happen Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Hence why the number begins to rise, which means we have a weakening storm system. We keep this going. We get into Wednesday evening. Do you see how much it really just expands and broadens there? Okay. In fact, it looks like it's weakening and then it looks like it's strengthening. But then look at this. Check out from, what is this? This is 8 p.m. Wednesday evening to 11 p.m. Wednesday evening. You see how the kind of lower half of this system kind of just goes from like the reds, the oranges, and the yellows to the greens. That's because dry air is starting to undercut this system. I'm going to talk about why that happens here in a second. But the H-Wharf model starts to weaken this system somewhat, but not dramatically. I don't want you guys to take what I'm saying with weakening as, let your guard down. This is going to be a catastrophic landfalling hurricane. But the H-Wharf model continues to push back the timeline of this. So now it has it kind of making a landfall as like Thursday morning instead of like Wednesday evening. This is the H-Wharf model. Moves in, makes that landfall about mid-morning, 9:46 millibar, category 3 or 4 hurricane north of Tampa. Okay, so this is the Tampa area, all right, surrounding communities. Makes landfall, say, closer to like Spring Hill, up to the Crystal River area, all right, and many other small towns, kind of south of Cedar Key, though. Doesn't quite, it hits Cedar Key hard. But let's not stay too long on each model run here. And then this continues to go right over the north central areas of Florida, even brings impacts into southeast sections of Georgia. What about the HMON model? Initializing 1 millibar off, so it's doing pretty well. HMON model, as far as the structure of the storm, looks very odd. I don't know about it, but we continue to move forward here. We don't have a radar out here in the Bay of Campeche, Gulf of Mexico, to know the actual convection structure of this system. But the HMON model does something weird. It weakens the system, it weakens the system as we get into tomorrow morning. Let's hope that happens, but nothing points to that actually happening. But we continue to move this forward. The HMON model really doesn't like this intensifying. It does some weird, funky stuff here. And let's make sure we're yeah, I knew it. I was actually on the wrong hurricane. I was like, man, what is going on here? So that's my fault, guys. A little blooper there. That happens every once in a while. So this is the HMON model. I was like, man, what is going on here? So I was looking at Leslie, which Leslie most likely will weaken here in the coming days. So I'm sorry. This is Monday morning for Milton. Milton, 955 millibar low. Okay. As we're waking up tomorrow morning, just like the H-Wharf model is showing. Major hurricane proceeds to strengthen this into Monday evening. We get into Tuesday morning. It's a category 4 or 5 hurricane north of the Yucatan in the in the Gulf of Mexico. We get into Tuesday evening, folks. This is a category 4 or 5 hurricane, 931 millibar system. We get into Wednesday morning, 926, category 4 or 5 hurricane. And then we start to get, into, Wednesday afternoon. Here's the Tampa area, the bend of Florida. And look how the southern half of this system begins to get eat up by dry air. And look how this number begins to get higher, which means we have a weakening storm system. And it weakens dramatically on the HMON model. It really chops this system in half convection-wise and makes landfall as a 970-ish millibar system. I do not buy this weakening that dramatically. I think it weakens, but not this dramatically. Okay, and this makes landfall in the middle of the night, Wednesday night into Thursday morning. The center of the storm comes right into like the Palm Harbor area, but doesn't even bring a whole lot of impacts as far as rainfall, to Tampa. It just looks very odd. I don't know about it. Okay. Now we look at the HFA model, initializing pretty well. A couple millibars off, but no model is perfect, right? We keep this going. We go into Tuesday morning. Strengthens this into a category 2 hurricane Monday morning. I think I just said Wednesday morning. I meant to say Monday morning, okay? So we got about a category 2 hurricane at this point. All right, so this is Monday morning. We continue to move forward. Here we go to Tuesday morning. Look how much it deepens this. It takes a Tuesday morning all the way to a 919 millibar hurricane. And listen, in the short term, this is going to be a very compact hurricane. So we could see this getting to a very, very strong category 4 or 5 hurricane. It would make sense because it's so compact. Okay, sometimes these large hurricanes really struggle to really intensify. It would make sense this happening. It's a pretty kind of small, petite hurricane right now. It will continue to be over the next couple of days. But man, it bottoms this out into the 910s, folks. And then we start to get into Wednesday morning. It's a 908 millibar low on the HFA model. Ridiculous, right? Just hard to believe it getting that low. But then you see the number begin to rise. Weakening storm system, same thing as the last two hurricane models. It weakens it dramatically. It goes from like a 908 millibar category 5 hurricane to a ripping apart category 2 or 3 hurricane as it makes landfall, just pretty much in the same area as the HMON model. Okay, the impacts will be huge though. I just want to reiterate that even if this is a category 2 or 3 hurricane, if it was to go right into Tampa Bay and onshore flow gets into Tampa Bay, you guys are still cleaning up just from getting scraped by Helene. This would bring big impacts. We're going to talk more about that here in a second. And then it goes over Florida, right? HFB model, let's start to speed this up a little bit. Waking up tomorrow morning to a category 1 or 2 hurricane. It's already a 1. I think it could be stronger in this. We start to get into Tuesday morning. Once again, the HFB model showing that terrible scenario where this gets into the 9-teens, category 4 or 5 hurricane. And then look how it deepens this all the way to a 901 millibar category 5 hurricane by Wednesday morning, folks. I mean, that just is crazy. But then look how the number begins to rise. It looks like this thing peaks Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. That is the common trend. And I've been talking about that since, I believe, since like Friday night, that we've been seeing this. And then that number dramatically rises, which means it's dramatically weakening upon landfall. Okay, now the 18Z hurricane models are going to come out shortly. It might show something else, but I think it'll still be the common trend here. Now, we're going to look at the GFS here, and the GFS looks like it's running behind, which is kind of odd here. So, might be having issues, so we actually have to kind of go back to the 12Z GFS. All right. The global models, you know, the GFS is initializing this a couple millibars off, but the global models does want to deepen this into a 964 millibar hurricane by tomorrow morning. The GFS does, so that makes sense. Tuesday morning goes to a 952. So, you know, the GFS is not crazy strong like the hurricane models. Could it be right? Could it be wrong? Not sure. And then we get into Wednesday morning. This thing is a 948, category 3-ish hurricane. Okay, and then it begins to weaken somewhat, but makes landfall all the way, I mean, almost all the way into like the Cedar Key area. Okay, it's pretty far north, brings some impacts all the way into southeast Georgia. I would not rule out some tropical storm force conditions all the way into southeast Georgia with this. Okay, and then it heads on out to sea. What about the Euro? Euro is, I'm just showing mainly the Euro for the track. Okay, the strength of the system is way off. Well, we get into Monday morning, 993. Folks, it's already a 983 right now. So let's just move past this because the strength is all off. But where does this make landfall? The Euro takes this right into Tampa Bay. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the Euro AI model too. I do think that's worth looking at because this model has done pretty well. Euro AI model has consistently been further south. The Icon model has too. So this brings a landfalling category 2 hurricane or 3 hurricane just south of Tampa. This would take the hurricane more so into the Venice area, south of Sarasota, Inglewood, closer to Fort Myers. Okay, and then of course bring big time impacts across all of the peninsula of Florida and then get off the coastline. The Icon, kind of the same thing. Here it comes. Icon comes up and makes landfall just south of Tampa, right into the Sarasota area, okay, and brings a lot of impacts across the entire state of Florida, okay. Now, let's see if we have new ones here. Now, this is the latest 18Z Hurricane Milton track guidance here. So, if you notice, if you look really close to this, it really wants to bring the center of this. It looks like they're grouping up around Tampa Point south, just south, right into the Sarasota area. Okay, these global and hurricane models go right into this area. Now, what about the peak intensity? This is what alarms me as far as strength. You see how, and let's zoom this out a little bit, okay? Look how 3 of these models are getting a Category 5 status. It maxes out, let's use a different color here. It maxes out about 48 hours from now. Okay, which takes us into what, Tuesday evening, Monday morning. That's when it maxes this system out. Some have it maxing out more so Wednesday morning, but it looks like Tuesday evening into Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. That's where this system maxes out. Okay, now this makes landfall more so. Let's look at this really quick. This makes landfall more so in the hour, say 80 to 90 range. Okay, so if we go back and look at this, I would say like, yeah, the 80 to 90 range. Okay, so that is right into, say, here. Okay, so that, most of these spaghetti runs have this at a Category 3, 2, even a Category 1 hurricane. You see how it peaks in the Gulf of Mexico, and then it dramatically weakens at landfall. So that's something to watch here. A weakening right before landfall, maybe even a full 24 hours before landfall, which would be fantastic. But I think that, I saw a meteorologist put this on Twitter today. He put it like this: it could weaken before landfall, but the cake is baked by then. A big example of a system that weakened at landfall. People forget Katrina was a Category 3 hurricane at landfall. A lot of people think it was a Category 5. It was not. It was a Category 3 hurricane. It was a Category 5 hurricane just, I believe, 24 hours before landfall or so, maybe even sooner. But it weakened I would say, pretty substantially right before landfall. But the damage was done. Okay, so I think that's the same with Tampa. I think Rita did the same thing, Hurricane Rita. There's been other examples of that too. So don't get so caught up in the fact that it's weakening. But I don't want you to think that this is going to make landfall as a Category 5 hurricane. And some people might disagree in the comments, say, Mitch, you don't know, it might. The people who are all doomsday might want to make a landfall as a Category 5. Believe it or not, there's people like that. But I don't think this is going to make a landfall at its peak intensity. I really do not. Pretty confident in that. Might be wrong. Let's hope that I'm not wrong. Okay. So, anyways, as far as rainfall, let's see if we have some new information. We don't. So the rainfall continues to increase. They're calling for right into the Tampa Bay area now, 8 to 12 inches of rain, or on the west coast of Florida, just all of Florida, anywhere from 4 to as much as 12 inches of rain. Just depends on where you're located. Along the west coast of Florida, more rain. This is area of enhancement of rain between Jacksonville and Orlando towards the coastal regions that could get a solid foot of rain. Kind of an area of an enhancement. Same thing down here in the southern tip of Florida. A lot of rain is possible. A lot of rain is likely. You're getting a lot of it right now. So between now and the next 5 days, the risk of flash flooding, you have a moderate risk in the red area. It means you have at least a 40% chance in this red area to see flash flood guidance exceeding you got a 40% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in a given location. All right, so what about winds? The chances to see tropical storm force wind gusts pretty much across the entire peninsula of Florida is a 60 to as much as to 100% chance. So tropical storm force winds is, you might as well say 40 mile per hour winds or higher. So I don't even really like looking at this because it increases dramatically. You pretty much got a 90 to 100% chance to see this on the west coast, but I do want to show it to you, and I do want to show you the timeline. The timeline at which you start to see tropical storm force wind gusts, you'll start to see in the west coast of Florida as early as Tuesday evening, and across the entire state of Florida potentially, especially the peninsula of Florida, pretty much overnight, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, you'll start to see it. So that's the timeline there. But let's talk about probably what a lot of people want to see, okay? And that is how strong are these winds going to be? And the last time I checked, the National Hurricane Center did not have a graphic for storm surge up yet. Knowing my luck, they will post it at the 8 p.m. update right after I'm done with this video. It happens a lot. Regardless, I will hopefully, if they post it, have an update on a forecasted storm surge amount from the National Hurricane Center in tomorrow morning's video. But right now, I don't have anything because they haven't posted it. But let's talk about potential wind speed. So this is the GFS, and this is potential wind gust. Not sustained winds, but wind gust. It has 80, 90, 100 mile per hour wind gust going right into the Tampa Bay area. But it has the core of these winds north of Tampa. St. Petersburg, the Clearwater area, right up to Spring Hill, all the way up to the Crystal River area, points just inland. Ocala, I forgot. That's one of the names I always butcher in Florida. It should be an easy one, but you guys get what I'm saying. This would bring some nasty hurricane force wind gusts into your area. I mean, 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts. But the core of the winds goes right through here, blast through central. I mean, even gets into Orlando a little bit. But it looks like the core of the winds on the GFS is just north of Tampa. Okay, in Tampa, then points north between like Cedar Key and Tampa and surrounding communities. Okay, that's the GFS. Now, what about the European model? Okay, you notice how everything just shifted south there? This goes right into Tampa. Okay, how is the storm surge going to be into Tampa Bay? That is a $1 million question. Everybody's wondering, are you going to get this onshore flow? Are you going to get offshore flow? A combination of both? I think you can get a combination of both. It just depends on where the eye wall hits and what position of the eye wall it is. So this would bring the worst of conditions right into the Tampa area. St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Bradenton, I think is how you pronounce it, Sarasota, all the communities into this area. Okay, north and south of the area. This would bring 80, 90, 100 mile per hour wind gusts into the city. And then proceed to bring strong winds all throughout the higher populated areas of central Florida. Northern Florida, you get into Jacksonville, certainly some sea-influenced stronger winds. Jacksonville up to St. Augustine. I mean, even Daytona Beach, very strong. The Space Coast, very strong winds. I mean, 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts, no doubt. But this is the global models. The thing that I'm concerned about is these hurricane models. So this is the H-Wharf model. We're going to get this in motion here. And we'll start this off Tuesday midday. We're out in the ocean, so it doesn't really matter here. We get into Wednesday morning. Here it is. And this is wind speeds, not gust. We only can look at wind speeds on this model here. And we keep this going. And look at that wind field, folks. Oh, so this is what you watch for. I'm going to try drawing this a little bit. Okay. So the flow around the hurricane is going just like this. Very quickly, I might add. Destructive winds. Okay. Already you're getting water getting pushed up into the Bay Area right here, Tampa Bay. Tons of water getting pushed into these Bay regions down here also. What Bay Area is that called? That is Charlotte Harbor. That Bay Area, Port Charlotte, the same areas that got absolutely just rocked by Hurricane Ian. Okay, you got to watch the trends because this could trend south to you guys. But already by the middle of the night, if this model is right, Wednesday night into Thursday morning, you got a bunch of water being pushed into the Bay, Tampa Bay. Okay, you keep this going here. Look at this. Okay, so this would bring this specific model run, the H-Wharf model, would bring the actual core of the system just north of Tampa. But man, the damage is being done already, folks. Look, I mean, the flow around this is just going just like this, right? And it's going right into the Bay Area. That would be devastating storm surge. Catastrophic, life-threatening, all the crazy words you can think of. Just an awful situation. Okay? It would be bringing, this is winds. These aren't gusts. This would be bringing 60, 70, 80, 90 mile per hour winds into the bay, pushing tons of water into these areas. All these areas, folks. So you keep this going. Of course, this makes landfall, brings tons of winds across north central Florida. Okay, and then we look at just another hurricane model here. And these are just wind gusts instead of actual winds. And here it comes, very compact hurricane. This thing begins to broaden. Look how the wind field expands. Watch how it's so tiny right here north of the Yucatan Tuesday. By the time we get into Wednesday, look how the wind field explodes here. So already the core of the system's well off the coast of the west coast of Florida. This is Wednesday evening. You're already getting 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts into the Tampa area, points north, points south also. And then the core of this system makes landfall in the middle of the night, Wednesday night, and into Thursday. That's another thing. This thing is trending once again into a nighttime hurricane, which makes it this all the more dangerous. But once again, folks, this brings it in just north of Tampa Bay, which to me, bringing it in just north of Tampa Bay is more dangerous than south of Tampa Bay. If it comes in south, then you have kind of offshore flow. If it comes in just north, just like this is going to bring tons of storm surge right into the Tampa Bay area. Okay, I mean, along with Category 2, 3 hurricane force wind conditions. I mean, 90 to 100, 110 mile per hour gusts, just surging tons of water into the Tampa Bay area. Okay, this is going to be bringing a lot of water into the Bay Area to the south down here too. Okay, but maybe an offshore flow into this area. It just all depends on where the center of that storm goes, folks. And you keep this going all the way across Florida. Look at these nasty wind gusts up to Jacksonville. 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts Thursday morning. Look at these gusty winds all the way up into the low country of South Carolina. Dare I say you guys are starting to get into somewhat of the impact zone? Let's really hope not. Okay? But you continue to keep going. But I think you're going to get storm surge into the South Carolina, Georgia coastline. No doubt. No doubt about it. Especially as this system's pulling away, gets off the coastline. So if we're talking, now this is where we're going to nerd out with you guys just for a couple minutes. All right? So as far as the environment conditions, right now, this thing is exploding. The sun is setting on this system. You can see that the environment is, I mean, it is already starting to look like a Category 2 hurricane. Okay, air is being dispersed out away from the system right here, right there. You can see the fanning motion of the outflow here. The reason you're seeing these clouds going like this is actually in the low levels. In the upper levels, it's going like this. The low levels, it's rotating around the cyclonic flow of Milton. Okay, upper levels, air is being dispersed outward. And you can see it in the upper levels when you go back to look at this here. You see how, no, we're going to keep it at that. You see right here, you see these lines with the arrows embedded into them. You see how they're going just like this. They're going like that. They're going like that, like this. Kind of weird right in here, kind of going against it, but dramatic flow to the north. That's that westerly flow aloft. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the environment for this system supports rising air. So right now, tons of rising air going up to the middle of this hurricane. As soon as it goes up in the upper levels, literally above this hurricane, it gets dispersed outward. And then this allows for more air to rise. That gets dispersed outward, whether it's this way, whether it's that way. In this case, it's just in all ways. So this is allowing for an environment for a lot of rising air. Rising air allows for the sustaining and the firing of convection. Convection allows for a moist environment. A moist environment allows for rapid intensification, which is unfortunately what this system is pretty much doing right now. And this is for tomorrow morning, the environment conditions in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This continues, and it just creates this low to hardly no shear environment. This system is basically just thriving just north of the Yucatan as we're getting into Tuesday. But watch what happens. See how the number begins to rise right here? Why does it do that? Well, at this point, you're still getting a lot of disbursement of air on this side of the system. So that's good for the tropical system. But check out how the westerly flow is now slamming the western side of this system. It's going right up against it. When in the days prior, it was kind of getting pushed outward or just not affecting the storm system. So now you got this flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere that's going right up against the western side of the hurricane. This is creating wind shear on the western side of the hurricane. And this is going to allow for dry air to get to interfere with the actual cyclonic circulation of Milton. So that's ultimately why these hurricane models show a dramatic weakening of this system right before landfall. Now, the H-Wharf model doesn't show that much weakening. And honestly, I can buy this scenario more than the dramatic weakening of all the other hurricane models. Because to me, if you have such a strong hurricane, you're going to really have to get an enormous amount of wind shear for a long period of time for you to really take out a strong Category 4 or 5 hurricane and weaken it dramatically into like a Category 1 or 2. So it makes sense that it does weaken it, but not as dramatically like the other models compared to the H-Wharf model, which weakens it, but not substantially. Okay, so a great way to really see this here is, we're right now very moist environment. We get into tomorrow evening, very moist environment. It's crazy. The H-Wharf model shows us getting so strong, you can actually see dry air in the middle of the eye on it, right? But you see the dry air on this side of the screen, moist air in the green, dry air in the brown. You see how it's starting to creep up closer. You keep this going, watch what happens here. Dry air starts to creep into the system ever so slightly right at the last second. You see how the green right in here begins to lighten up and you start to get some dry air starting to creep into this. Now, say the HMON model is much more dramatic with this. Kind of go back. Look what happens with the HMON model, right? I mean, Wednesday morning, very moist environment, right? But watch how the dry air interferes with this system just suddenly. It's like it just spawns out of nowhere. And this is like a dry hurricane at this point. It shreds it apart very quickly. So that's an extreme of that way. The H-Wharf model is kind of another solution where I think it's a gradual process, which makes more sense to me. And I'm not trying to toot the worst case scenario alarm here. I think you guys know that, but it is concerning just what we're seeing. So the last thing I'll show you guys is a clipping from the discussion from the National Hurricane Center. It says intensity guidance is about as bullish as I've seen in this part of the basin, talking about the Gulf of Mexico, with almost everything showing a peak intensity of a Category 4 or 5 storm in the southern Gulf of Mexico in a day or two. The National Hurricane Center forecast is raised from the previous one and lies near the intensity consensus model and still could be too low. They're saying it could still be too low, folks. So, dangerous situation. Let's refresh this, see if we have any new information. We don't. Just know that it's a changing situation, guys. By the time some of you folks watch this could potentially be a stronger hurricane. It will be, no doubt about it. But this thing is intensifying into a monster as the sun begins to set on it. God bless all y'all. I'll have you another video in the morning bright and early. Talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your night.